phone? Show me your phone. Oh, look at that phone. I was going to put that phone in my pocket or behind me, turn it over on my table. I can do what I do with my students. When I see the phone, I just take it, but I won't take it from you. Okay. I'm going to guess what you're thinking in your mind. You are thinking, who is this person? Who is this lady? She's been walking around here. She's been watching us. What is she doing? Why is she always whispering in the corner? It's weird. Let me tell you. Okay. My students on exams answer the easy questions first. So I'm going to answer the easy questions first. Who am I? My name is Lena Papagiannis. My students call me Miss Papa. And I teach American and world history to students your age in Boston, Massachusetts. This is my school where I teach. Are they good? Understand?
Yes.
Kind of?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I'm in the corner whispering "odražavaju" because I only speak English and French, so I don't understand you.
Shame on you.
Shame on me. It's bad. I need to learn. You can teach me next time. Okay. A harder question. Why am I here? We don't know. We don't know. Okay. I'm going to ask you a question first. Okay, close your eyes. Close them eyes. And I'm going to say a word, and I want you to have a picture in your mind when I say the word, okay? Like you could just take a picture with your phone, and the word is America. What's the picture in your mind? Turn to the person next to you. Open your eyes. Turn to the person next to you. Tell them. What did you have in your mind when I said America? What was in your head? Donald Trump. That. What was in your mind? McDonald's. I heard cheeseburger. Donald Trump. Flag. Britney Spears flag. Yeah. Maybe football? No. Yeah. These are my students. Yeah, you said we didn't like football. I won't tell you that. Maybe you think of Beyonce? No, that's me. Maybe you think flags. Someone said flags. Maybe you think of this. What about this? This? That?
No.
This?
No.
Yes. So, this America is a very different America from the cheeseburger and the flags. But it's America. Yesterday and today I heard this word, multi-perspectivity, that you used with your teachers here, right? So that concept makes sense for me in America as it makes sense for you here. Because the cheeseburger and the flags and the smiles, that's all America. But so is this, right? America is many things. So I'm going to look at a specific example with you about this issue. Okay. Does anybody need translation of this part? It's going to get more complicated. So we can stop and do translation. Okay. Raise your hand if at any point you want translation and we'll do it. Not a problem. Okay? okay with that? Okay. Maybe somebody can translate for your friends back there. Okay. 2 years ago, a young white man went into a black church, traditionally black church, in a state called South Carolina. And there were 10 people in there. They were having a service. Okay? And the worshipers, the people in the church, said, "Welcome, come on in." And then he sat down, and he was there for 1 hour. And he watched them pray, and he watched them sing and talk about the Bible, what they were doing in the church. For an hour. And after that hour was over, he took out a gun and he shot them. In the church. And there were 10 people in there, and he killed 9 of those people. And for the last person, number 10, he said, "I'm leaving you alive so you can tell the story of why I was here. And that I was here because I hate black people. And everybody needs to know that." And then he left the church, and it was a massacre. There were many images of this young man, that's him, that came out in the media after this happened. Have you seen this image before? You know about the story? No?
I've seen an image on Tumblr, but I don't know this guy.
Yeah. So is this an American flag?
No.
Okay. So what is it? That's weird.
It's a Confederate flag.
It's a Confederate flag. So we're going to talk about that just for a couple minutes, because I don't think everybody knows it's a Confederate flag. What is that? So, to understand this question fully, we have to look at American history a little bit. I'm a history teacher, so you can't leave here without a little bit of American history. You might know that at the very beginning, when America was created, the creator said, "We want freedom, we want equality for everyone." But they did not really mean everyone. That was not really what they wanted. Because in America, people were not free and equal. Because we had in America enslaved African Americans. 4 million people. 4 million people in the United States. And that slavery was the foundation of the US economy. That was the beginning of it, and it grew over time. African Americans African Americans had no rights in America at that time. They did not own their own bodies. This is my body and what I want to do with my body. They could not own it. They could not read. They were forbidden by law. It was illegal to learn how to read if you were black, for example. But really just to imagine what it would be like to not be able to own your own person. Of course, they were human beings. They liked things, they did not like other things. They had ideas, they had wishes, they had fears, just like you, and you, and you, and me, right? But they did not own their own bodies. That was the foundation of America. And slavery existed in the North and in the South of America for a while. But then, states in the North said slavery would be illegal in the North. No more slavery in the North. But many people in the North still did benefit from slavery because the slaves in the South would be picking cotton, right? That we made clothes from that. And so in the North, in the factories in the North, slavery was illegal, but the cotton from the South was not. The entire American economy was built, right, on slavery. And slavery continued to grow in the South through the mid-1800s. But wealthy people in the South, the 1% of people in the South who owned a lot of slaves, were really worried that the country was going to say slavery illegal now. And they didn't want that to happen. They wanted to keep slavery. So, in 1861, 11 states in the South of the United States said, "Oh, no, we are not part of America anymore. Now, we are the Confederacy," like you said. Right? We are the Confederate States of America. And they wrote about this, they talked about this, they were very, very public in what they said about why they wanted to be their own country. And why did they want to be that country? This is a quote from the Declaration of Independence of the state of Mississippi, which is in the south of the United States. And they said, our position is thoroughly, totally, in support of the institution of slavery, the greatest material interest in the world. We are leaving the United States because we want to make sure slavery continues forever. And that was their flag. It was a little bit different at that time. It didn't look quite like this, but it was similar to this throughout the war. And there was a war. That was the American Civil War from 1861 to 1865. The United States was trying to bring the Confederacy back to be part of the United States. And we had 700,000 soldiers die. That does not count the number of people who died who were not soldiers. People, regular people. And in 1865, the Confederacy said, okay, we lost. And the United States would remain one country. It brought the Confederacy back into the United States. And slavery was abolished, which means it's over. No more slavery. 1865, it's illegal now. And all the people who had been slaves, maybe some like these young men who became soldiers during the war to fight for the United States, became free people for the first time. Okay, so that's the American Civil War. Very, very small amount of information about it. I want you to think to yourself, the Confederacy that fought this war to keep slavery, that lost the war, how many monuments to the Confederacy currently exist in the United States? 0 to 5, 50 to 100, 300 to 500, 700 to 1,000. If you think there are A, 0 to 5, raise your hand. If you think there are B, 50 to 100, got some brave souls. C, 300 to 500. 700 to 1,000. Okay. So, for people who said 700 to 1,000, why did you say that? Why did you say that number? Did you just guess? You have an idea? Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of people that still hate black people.
And so they would use these monuments
Yes.
to show that?
Mm-hmm.
Any other ideas?
It was 11 states in South.
Say it again.
11 states in South.
11
I
states?
mean, it's a lot of people.
Yes.
So it's a reasonable presumption that it's a lot of money.
Big geographic area, a lot of people. Maybe some of those people believe what you're saying.
Maybe not.
And maybe not.
It doesn't have to be like that, but it's just in their tradition. I mean, they were Confederate states.
Uh-huh. And there's the question that we are getting to. Exactly.
Sorry.
Yes, no, it's not that. So, I have a question for you that I want you to think about for a second. I'm going to stop talking for a minute for you to talk to somebody next to you. You can speak, you don't have to speak in English. But my statement here is this. This is not a statement I necessarily believe, but it's a statement. The United States should have memorials to the Confederacy on official government property. Would you say that you strongly agree with this? You very much support this statement? That you agree, but not 100%? Do you disagree with this statement? Or do you really, really disagree, strongly disagree with this statement? And why? You take a moment, think about this statement, and talk to the person next to you about it. I'm going to stop talking. Okay, let me bring you back together here. Raise your hand if you are thinking that you strongly agree with this statement. Do we have people who agree? Do we have disagree? Do we have strongly disagree? Okay, twice. You disagree and strongly disagree.
I raised my hand 3 times.
3 times, not twice. Okay. I have a volunteer. Somebody explain, why did you choose the answer you chose? Why did you choose that? Person. Yeah, blue jacket.
I think that it should not be forgotten, and we should raise consciousness. Do not repeat it. And that should be a lesson to all of us. Do not hate any of us based on our race or religion.
So you said agree?
Yes.
Can I ask you, why did you not strongly agree?
That's a difficult question.
Yeah.
I don't strongly agree because I hate what they did, and I agree just because of the history.
So you think it should be remembered and not forgotten, but you don't support what occurred, what happened? Okay.
Only for the negativity.
Yeah. Okay. Any other ideas? Either people who agree with her or something different? Yes, ma'am.
I disagree because the whole sentiment that the Confederacy had towards the United States was like, we don't want to be with you, we want our separate state. So I think we shouldn't celebrate someone who is so un-American. We should have memorials for the Civil War, but not the Confederacy. Not the slave owners.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you're doing a good job of explaining why you disagree, but do not strongly disagree. Because I heard you say that you think there should be memorials to the Civil War, but not necessarily memorials to the Confederacy. So something sort of in between.
Yeah, if I can. Not all the people that were fighting for Confederacy were forced slaves. I mean, they just lived in those states, and it was war. Some of them were conscripted and had to fight.
Forced to fight.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Not necessarily forced to fight, but all their neighbors were going to fight, and
Right.
it's that sense of patriotism. It doesn't have to be behind the idea of slavery,
Yeah.
but of patriotism for their own country. And we have many Southern generals that were against slavery. I mean, just examples of that.
So we're hearing from these three individuals, 3 of the main arguments that people make about these memorials in the United States. There are others too, people who are very much in support, really strongly agree there should be memorials. But these are the ideas that people talk about. But it is important to remember that the historical documents are very clear. The people themselves who were at the time, those generals that you're talking about, did say that they were fighting to keep slavery. Now, not every person who was fighting there could read, so not every person who was fighting in the army in the Confederacy necessarily was fighting for this. But the documents say this, right? The Declaration from Mississippi that I showed you, for example. But 38% is the percentage of people in America who believe that protecting slavery was the reason Southern states left the United States and made the Confederacy. Only 38% believe that historical fact. The rest of the people in America do not believe that the Confederacy was created to protect slavery. They believe it was created for some other reason, to promote independence, for example. And then, it's not surprising that in high schools, only 25% of teachers in my position teach that the historical documents say that the Confederacy was created to protect slavery. So most people in America don't connect the Confederacy to slavery.
Only in the South or
No, this is the whole country. Yeah. It's a higher percentage of people, well, this percentage is lower in the South. So this brings us back to this flag that man had a picture of when he made his declaration of what he did in that church. And the flag is present not just in his hands, but in the hands of people who don't necessarily commit violence like that, but just people who see this as Southern pride. And it's in front of state capitol buildings, important buildings, all throughout the South. This is starting to change. Because that massacre in 2015 made people start to get nervous. And Southern governments, the states in the South, started to remove Confederate monuments and flags. Right? Those 700 or so monuments throughout our country, and the flags that appear in various places. By the way, they're removing the flags not on people's personal houses, but in government buildings. So how might people react to this? The Southern governments start to take down the flags, take down the monuments. What might people in America say?
Maybe they were angry.
Maybe they were angry.
Because they love their country.
They love the South. Yep, that's true. Maybe you might see a headline like this, where it says, it's a snapshot of a headline, Confederate monuments, extremist threats doubled New Orleans removal budget. So what this means is that extremist threats, like terrorist threats, made it cost twice as much money for the city of New Orleans to remove the Confederate monuments that were in their city, because they had to pay more money to make sure that people did not do acts of violence in reaction to the monuments being taken down. You have to pay police to be there, for example. Right? So that tells us about your answer, right? People's anger. Other people take them, it's like them, take them all down now. Somebody wrote on the base of a monument. This is in New Orleans, the city of New Orleans, it's in Louisiana. This is a monument to the main general in the Confederacy during the war, General Lee. What do you see in this image? Yes. What do you see here?
They are celebrating.
Celebrating, they have these flags, these people here have their posters, and we're wondering what's going to happen to this monument. What's going to happen? The plan now is to take this monument down.
Are there also African Americans on the left side?
No, there's policemen.
No, there's policemen,
But there are no African.
it's incredibly rare to see that happen.
Okay.
Yeah. When it happens, people are like, oh my God, what is that? It's so different. It's very, very rare.
Thanks.
So, yeah. A person's reaction to this moment, right? There's that multi-perspectivity again. Who you are determines how you feel about that monument coming down.
You've been listening already.
I've been listening. So this person is a journalist in the United States. His name is Bob, and he says monuments are not relics of a bygone era. So they're not like old things from time that has gone by. They're indicators of the time that we are living in now. This is what you've been talking about too with other people, and you talked yesterday about the text on the memorial in Sarajevo, for example, right? It's an indicator of the time that we're living in, how people feel about those monuments. So, the battle over our monuments is not just a battle over the past, as it is here. It's a battle over the present, right? What are we going to say about it? And so these are really big questions, really, really big questions that I, as an American teacher, am asking myself all the time. We as Americans are asking ourselves, who are we as a country? How should we remember our past? What is the best way, as you were saying before, to remember this thing that happened before, even if many of us don't agree with what happened? How can we all live in the same place, peacefully, without going into a church and hurting each other, if our answers to these questions are different? How do we do that? It's a very big question. And how do we do multi-perspectivity in a way where we don't simply say, no matter what you believe is fine, even if what this other person believes hurts me? How do I do that? How does an African American stand there before someone who says, I don't think that you're human? Then multi-perspectivity becomes very, very hard. So this brings me to Bosnia. Why are you here in Bosnia? You're talking about America. Bosnia and the United States are not the same thing. That's very clear. But I'm here because I want to explore what we can learn from each other about how to remember the past in a way that promotes peace for us without forgetting the past. And history teachers here are not the same as history teachers in the United States, the teachers that you've had up here. But history class might put you guys to sleep at school, boring dates and names of people, but I don't think that that's history class. Hopefully you don't forget everything. I think that history class is where we figure out who we are as a people, at least a little bit. And it changes how we see ourselves, and it changes what we see in other people. When I see somebody who holds a Confederate flag or has a Confederate flag on their truck, what do I think about them? That was taught to me at least a little bit in my history class. So, like monuments, history teachers, if they're Bosnian or American or whatever they are, help to shape, mold, create people's visions of the past and of themselves. So, those similarities between Bosnian teachers and myself tells me we can learn from each other. That's why I'm here. So, thank you for having me here, allowing me to listen to your presentations. Thank you very much, Milan, for everything, and Milan, of course, and all of the teachers who have helped me learn just by listening. Thank you all for that.
Would you agree with that in the South would be now a state, independent from the state?
Is that possible?
If they want it now. Would you agree?
Like you have in Texas, you have a very strong movement for independence.
So
what does that mean?
What is the real possibility of parts of the United States becoming separate?
Yeah.
Similar to.
Very, very unlikely. Extremely unlikely because of the military, because of the tax structure, because of those things. It's not. To me, it's not good. The evidence is not there to suggest that those places could exist as a state.
Is there any idea in the society about that?
There are some extremist groups that advocate for, not for the South, but advocate for racially pure nations. That we should have a part of America where all the white people live and a part where all of the black people live, and then anybody who's both, I don't know where they go. So there's some people who want that, but they're a very small number. Yeah.
Yes. Why are you still calling African Americans African Americans? For an outsider like me, it seems like we are not accepting them like Americans.
So what you are hinting at, or you're saying right now, reminds me of the presentation that we just saw about the propaganda and the media, right? And how words can be manipulated to give you an idea about something. So you are right, because we don't say, when people say Americans, generally the image they have is a white American. And so that is the standard, and then the other groups are second. You're right. Those words communicate that. What do I think about Bosnia? I think it's very beautiful. People are extremely nice to me that I've met so far. It's been amazing. It's been very interesting to me. I think one surprising thing, I think for perhaps Americans to hear, is that we are not so different. Both because we're human beings, and all human beings are quite similar, but also because our countries face challenges that are not so different. And so that to me is an interesting thing to experience. Sometimes it's hard for us to look at ourselves very closely, but you can see yourself in somebody else more easily. So that's been my experience here.
That is a quote from somewhere.
From me. Quote me next time you hear it.
Mamy czas na pytanie?
It's true that African Americans get hurt when they call them black people. I mean, I'm sorry if you get offended, but...
No, black is not an insult.
No, but nigger.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I think really it's just it's a duration.
Because in the media, most musicians are the lyrics, and they do have the N-word in the lyrics. So
Yes, and most of those musicians are black themselves. And so that's a situation where when people use that word, historically, it was a word that white slave masters would use to their slaves. And the word has been retaken by people in the black community to mean something different. That's not true for everyone. I'm not black, so I can't speak from that perspective. But from what I've heard, that's something that some people who are black think it's okay for black people to use that word, and some people don't. Multi-perspectivity again. But generally speaking, I've never, in my experience, met a black person who thinks it's okay for a white person to use it because of the history.
Would you recommend the movie from Tarantino, Django Unchained?
It's not historically accurate.
Really?
Yeah, there's some historical inaccuracies
Too much for
there, and there's a lot of violence. But I can't really think right now of any Civil War movies that are actually historically accurate. But it's a period of time that is surrounded in myth. So a lot of the movies about the Civil War are made from the Confederate point of view, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gods and Gentles, that's good.
There's
Couple movies.
Yeah. There's a movie called Glory, which is about one of the regiments in the army that was all black soldiers. That's an interesting movie. It's called Glory. You can watch it on.
Can you tell us something more about your school?
About my school?
The way you teach.
Where I teach or the way I teach?
The way.
both.
So I teach at a school that's really large. It's about, well, next year we're going to be probably about 1,700 students, 1,700. From grade 7 in the United States, it's about 11, 12 years old, to 18 years old, seniors. And it is a school that's in a city, and Boston is a city. And generally in the United States, cities, schools are majority not white in terms of the race of the students. Most of my students do not speak English at home. They speak another language. And so they are multilingual. Many of the students speak not just 2, but maybe 3 languages, which is amazing.
Same as us.
Yep. And it is very useful for their brain development that they do this. Our school is a very large school, and because of that, and because of being a city school, we often don't have enough money to buy some of the things that we need. So I don't have textbooks to use with my students. And so I make all the other materials. I use sources from the internet that I find, historical sources and archives and those kinds of things. We don't have textbooks to use, so I can't use them.
We buy textbooks for each student's buys and teachers buy.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, our students don't. Some students have to buy textbooks for certain classes. Generally, that's not something students can afford. And we don't have a situation where we wouldn't want half the class having a textbook and the other half not being able to afford a textbook. So we have enough textbooks for some classes to have textbooks, but my class does not. So the students have a lot of discussions around historical documents, and we talk about how those things relate to us today. For example, we talk about these Confederate monuments and the flag, how we think about that in relationship to the past. What we learn about.
Did you learn about Boston in class?
Do my students teach about or learn about it? Yes, they do. Not every year. So they learn about in the class on the 20th and 21st century. They learn about Bosnia when they learn about World War I, and they learn again about Bosnia when we talk about states that are made up of multiple nations. That's an example.
How does that work? I mean, when you are teaching about European history,
Yeah.
okay, so how does that work? You are doing it like World War II, everything about World War II, or specific nations through the war, or just a topic?
It depends on the teacher. They'll do it in different ways with the
So
course.
you have, you can choose what to do. You don't have a strict curriculum,
There's a curriculum,
but more like guidelines or something.
that depends on the state, on the individual, district. So that really is different for every district in the country. There's not a uniform one history curriculum that every child in American school learns. No. And that's partially why this debate about history is coming up in our media, because the standards in Texas are different from the standards in South Carolina, which are different from Minnesota and Massachusetts and California. And so then you have a situation where we are all able to move throughout this country and get a degree from an American high school, but what people learn and how they learn it is different depending on where they're at. So, very, very different sometimes. Sometimes even they contradict each other. So, it's hard to give a specific answer given that it's so different everywhere.
How did you heard about Bosnia? And why did you choose to come here to do that? I mean, there are more countries and more people.
Yeah, it's a big world.
She came here because of our camp.
Yes, because of this camp. I first came here, I've been interested in Bosnia for a long time. I'm a history teacher, so history and recent history especially is very interesting to me. And it's something that I learned about when I was in school, as a young person, when I was going to school, and I always wanted to learn more about it. I came here last summer for vacation and started to learn more, and that was when my interest was really sparked. And so it was because of that trip and what I learned from the people I spoke to when I was here that.
Is there anything that you don't like about Bosnia?
All your friends are going to hate you for asking questions.
Yes. I don't care.
Is there anything I don't like about Bosnia? No, I don't have. The shower at my hotel is very cold. And then it's very, very hot. And I can't find the in-between. That's one thing I don't like. I think that's it. I don't know enough to know what I don't like, you know. I think I wouldn't say that, oh, there's nothing I don't like and it's perfect, because that, I think, reveals that you don't know very much if you say that. So I'm still learning a lot.
What about food?
What about it? It's great. We had fish yesterday. We had the grilled meats today. We had, yeah, it was all really, it's been really good. My family is Greek, and the food is not that different. So it feels very familiar to me. Like, we call it by different names, but, you know, it's very similar. Yeah. They're from my school. Thank you. I like your